Spaceman, we meet again. How are you, Austin?
Hello. Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. Little looking forward to talking about the end of the or talking about next year and then forgetting about it for a week. That'd be nice.
Yeah, this is tonight. We get up at 3 a.m. to make it to the airport to do the nightmarish airport to go and see family. This is like the last and lucky last, save the best for last, work job to do for before Christmas. So I'm looking forward to it. But as we do, I think we start with a recap. We start with a personal recap. How are your 6 months?
Um Challenging. Busy, challenging. I guess a tale of good and evil, of boon and bane.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was probably very shortly after we recorded the last one. Um, Kate got pregnant. And
Oh,
so
was
now
it?
we're about 6 months into that. So that's a good thing. That was on purpose. I'm pretty sure it's mine. Uh, but then, I don't know, like this fall slash Q4, was pretty ugly and rough, right? For the world, for individuals. Mine was synced up pretty nicely with the worldly horror. The same week that Israel began the ground assault on Gaza, our cat of 16 years died, and a family member was murdered. That was like all within a couple days, and then it was like, oh, and they're going to start the ground assault. I'm sure doing that on a lunar eclipse indicates that it'll be over quick and everybody be happy with the result.
Yeah,
No hard
exactly.
feelings.
Yeah, fuck. I
So
know.
yeah, the Q4 is rough, but you know, we got a new kitten, and we'll have a new human kitten before too awful long.
Amazing. Yeah, so ultimately worth it in its own way. Yeah. Mine was mixed as well. Mixed is the right way of putting it. There's some pretty good wins in there. The Fortune's Fools came out and so on and achieved some health goals,
Oh,
but also had some, yeah, could have had a better time of some of the adventures, put it that way. So I come to the end of the year somewhat exhausted and not really. James and I were talking about this last night. The last time we tried to have a beach holiday was May, and my uncle died. So we're still, and that was our first actual relaxing holiday rather than lunatic Rune soup adventure since 2019. And that was cut
mm,
short. So a little bit superstitious about doing it again. But if we don't, oh my goodness. So that was our scheming last night, is like, how do we actually get to like not do stuff? If you hear mowing in the background, dear listeners, that's because we got up at 6 to get through the tasks we need to take a day and a half away from this place, and it will be down to the wire.
Shorin.
Yeah, that's the story of now, I think. All right, so that's a personal H2 of 2023. Let's look at the space weather and what hit and what didn't. When we look back over, yeah, because once in a great while, which I would say is once every 3 quarters, give or take, um, they do make it rather obvious. And I feel like this was certainly on a personal basis one of those moments. But if we look at H2, what are your thoughts at this end of it about the different transits and what we thought happened?
Yeah, I think it was pretty. I think it was pretty neatly subdivided between all the Venus and Leo stuff over the summer, which was personal for people. It was also like it what it looked like on the surface of culture was Barbie mania. I don't know how much did we talk about. I mean, I don't remember exactly how much we talked about the Venus and Leo sort of archetypes, but it became so clear in the lead up to and afterward that Barbie, Hulk Hogan, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all of these like giant blonde winning machines all of them move into cultural relevance during the Venus and Leo cycle, and that goes back for as long as each of those three have careers. And it's interesting now to see. I believe Taylor Swift was just voted Times whatever person of the year, who's kind of another like giant blonde winning machine. And so it was just funny to be like, oh, it's that archetype of clock, right? Like that's just what it looks like during this period of time. And then the for me, for me as well as for Kate and I, we have important timing with that Venus and Leo cycle. We got together right before the Venus retrograde in Leo in 2007. We got married right after the Venus retrograde in Leo in 2015, and um, um, uh, she became with child right before the Venus retrograde in Leo cycle in 2023. So that like perfect 8-year thing. Also, our beloved elder cat Bear Bear, we got him. He was born on the Venus direct station in 2007, and he died right after the Venus direct station in Leo of 2023. And so, of
So
course, we got a new kitten
yeah.
who was born right after the Venus direct station. So we got another Venus direct in Leo cat,
So
and
this
so
begs a
far
question I don't
he's
think I've
fitting the
asked you
bill.
before. Like you seem to have known exactly. Like, do you have the natal chart for your cats? Like, do you know, like, were they born in the afternoon, or do you have approximately? Oh, this is from that litter from last week. Like, how tight can we do their natal charts?
So Bear, who's passed on, Bear Bear, was a rescue, and so that was an estimate,
Right.
but so he was born right around the Venus retrograde, the Venus direct station after the retrograde. The new one, Biako, is we actually have a time of day because he's
Okay.
from a breeder. We had to get another Maine Coon. And so yeah, I know where the moon is. We know we know all the things, and we literally selected from that litter based on scrutiny of the natal chart.
I mean, as you would, as you would. All right.
It's
Um. Yeah.
embarrassing, but like that's a proper application of science if you're going to live with a creature for 20 years.
No, exactly. You're gonna want to do your best with the synastry. That's for sure. Especially with a cat. I mean, yeah, definitely more of a dog person, but like, let's try and smooth as many of the edges of a cat's personality as we can using
Yeah,
science.
no, I literally I we selected for that. It was a moon conjunct Neptune in Pisces. We're like
Oh, very
he'll
good.
be sleepy and fun because we have a yeah, we have a cat with Sumo, has a very different natal chart. She was born in 2020 and feels like a 2020 cat. She's I should say magnificent, but not always kind. So we
Gotcha.
wanted a chill cat.
Yeah, yeah, very good, very good. So back to H2. That was the
Oh
Barbie
yeah, so yeah,
configuration. Anything else? Yeah.
fun cat stuff, babies and kittens and all that. And then Q4 was brutal, right? It was like Mars, K2, Pluto, eclipses, Mars and Scorpio, more eclipses. It was just brutal. The family member deaths, cat deaths, horrible civilian deaths. Like that got going really quick in Q4, and then I don't know. Now is sort of like I should say that reality got established early on, and now we're here.
Yeah, that's. I like how you front loaded the discussion literally with babies and kittens, so that we can just like everyone. It's not going to be all nightmarish. We start with kittens and babies, but then we move on to the nightmares. So,
Yeah.
with I don't know. I mean, is there anything else to say about H2 before we move into 2024?
Um. Let's see. There's some things that I think there's some trends that might be worth looking back on, but in the context of 2024 topics. So
Yeah, awesome. Good idea. To which, let's begin. We had a a pre-game call, as we usually do last week, to talk about the different points we want to chat about in this show. And let's start with the overview, because I think we came up with a couple of really good overarching positions that are useful for people looking at 2024 in general. So let's go with the overview of 2024. What are your initial thoughts? What branding do we put on this?
Right. So as we were talking about, I had a couple thoughts. One of them was that so 20 things will happen in 2024 that seem, how should we say, consequential, and that people will want to map trajectories out from. Be like, well, if this happens now, then in 3 years, X and Y are going to happen. And there's a lot of those are going to be red herrings, because as we've been talking about on this podcast, and I believe at our live event in 2019, since before the turn of the decade, 2025 is the big halftime show.
Yeah.
A bunch of big shit happens. A bunch of new trajectories get established. And so we are 2024, although being loud, obnoxious, like full of sound and fury, is really more likely to signify the end of things that we've been doing for a while, rather than the trajectories we'll be going on. On a very simple level, we've got Neptune in Pisces. Neptune has been in Pisces on and off since 2011, and 2024 is the last year that Neptune will only be in Pisces. It's back and forth in 2025 between Pisces and Aries. Uranus, this is Uranus's last year in Taurus. We started Uranus in Taurus in 2018, and and it will start bouncing back and forth between Uranus and Taurus next year. So this year is like the end. It's the last full installment of Uranus and Taurus, last full installment of Neptune and Pisces. The one thing that we are getting this year that's like part of the new trajectory is Pluto into Aquarius. And so just to give a timeline, Neptune gives 14 years a sign, Pluto gives about 20 right now, and then Uranus gives 7. So 2025, we get a new 7-year, we get a new 14-year, and then right now we're in the midst of getting this new 20-year with Pluto with Pluto moving into Aquarius. And so, if you were there's the danger of predicting the next season's plot line by watching the season finale rather than by watching the season premiere. On a very simple level, 2025 has a lot of season premieres, and finales have a lot to say about the future, but they're not as good as premieres for what are the actual arcs this season. And so that, combined with the fact that we have just like we did this year, we have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, but closer. Yeah. And Saturn and Neptune in Pisces is very confusing. Excuse me, it's very confusing as to what is real and what has weight and what does not have weight. And certainly things have conspired during 2023 to make our sort of tenuous grip on objective reality all the slipperier, right? And things are going to continue to move in that direction. And so I think there's a real danger of there's just a real danger of mistaking a finale for a premiere. And that's all the more because the first half of the year especially is front loaded with all of these very, what's the word? How should we say? Adrenaline spiking Mars moments. Like Mars hits almost every slower moving body in the first 6 months. And it's just, it's a lot of call to arms and calls for alarm that, it's like this combination of like potentially like lots of red herrings and then a lot of max panic moments, which make it all the harder to figure out which plot lines to follow.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's the red herring thing when we were talking about. We began with the year of red herrings and then ended on so long and thanks for all the red herrings as one of the
Yeah,
phrases
yeah, yeah.
because it is and I want to be like you emphasize something that's important. It's not that the stuff that is going to happen next year is inconsequential. It's very consequential.
Right.
It's a season finale. It's not what you use to predict. And I've been sitting with that and thinking about what that's going to look like. We will have actual proper digital currencies, and Australia's rolling out a digital ID and so on. Of course, we are now. That kind of malarkey, I don't think survives the actual Great Reset, like the cosmic 2025 to 2027. So a lot of stuff's going to happen. That's actually the end of a build out that won't look the same by the end of the decade. And I think that's quite important. I think it's going to be a messy year of flash bombs, but also they still have shrapnel in them, right? So it's not just like, oh, I'm blinded, but everything's fine. It's like, oh, I'm blinded, but there's still shrapnel.
Yeah.
It's still quite pyrotechnic, but it's not you don't get the same long-term actionable intelligence out of the mess that we're about to go through in the first half of the year in particular.
Yeah, yeah. The one of the images that I believe we were talking about is it's the meme where it's like me trying to do blah blah blah, and there's a truck trying to cross
Yeah.
a rail line, and then it was like, but X happens, and then it's the train blowing through the truck trying to cross it. Like 2025 to 7 is the train that's just going to, it literally, like, it's a nice geometrical depiction of, you think you're going this way, but actually the world is moving this way.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, one way that I think that will probably play out is with the US presidential election. Somebody will get elected saying they're going to do this, and then the 2025 to 2027 train will blow through and be like, oh, actually the whole presidency is about this.
All right. I still remain to be convinced that you'll have anything resembling an election, certainly after this Colorado stuff. So, but the same will apply. It's like there'll be some nominal figurehead at the end of this queasy, ham-fisted, technocratic attempt to pretend that everything's fine in Washington, and then the realities of the world will come knocking through 2025 to 2027. But it's like, this is the point. It's the stuff that plays out in this coming year is red herrings, like red herrings falling from the sky, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just like, it kind of doesn't matter what you're planning if you are a nation state, if before the, the history, the train of history comes in. It's like, oh, it's actually 100 million tons moving in this direction, and that's going to be, the agenda is like dealing with that, whichever version of that we get.
That meme's a really good choice. Did I send you the favorite one that I've seen the last couple of weeks, where the train coming in is like, what the worst she can say is no, and the train that's derailing it is ooh. And brutal, but true.
I believe ick is the new slang for ew.
But I saw that, I'm like, triggered. Talk about like, well, that brought me back to some less happy fucking times. All right. The other one we had from an overview perspective, and it was not, I don't want to say a bit more of a throwaway, but we were talking about like archetypal dragon stuff. And is that because of Mars? Like, what are we, when we're looking at 2024, what other framing around the dragon can we have?
Yeah, where's the dragon stuff? Well, it's the year of the dragon.
True.
Right, in the East Asian calendar, right? So we get, I don't remember whether the switchover is in January or February this year, but it's year of the dragon. And dragon intersects really, year of the green dragon too, the wood dragon. Dragon intersects really interestingly with this, this pond stocked with red herring, because dragon is the only member of that wheel of animals that doesn't physically exist, right? Dragon is imaginary. And yet dragons being imaginary has never stopped them from being incredibly powerful, right? What's what's impressive about Dragon is that Dragon doesn't exist and yet manages to impact the world as much or more than animals that do exist.
Yeah, there's a lot in that. I was sitting with the archetype, and I think I mentioned on the call, I want to work this in somehow. It's towards the medicine thing, but something when I was immobilized in Paraguay, I ended up watching the Jordan Peterson Exodus roundtable thing, some of which was really good, I'll be honest, but I needed something to keep me company as I was lying awake through the night screaming. And that Kermit voice was it. And one of the things he said was, why do dragons hoard gold? Because that which we most desire is where we least want to look. And the archetype of the dragon in that sense, from a self change and transformation perspective, whatever the thing you want to do is, whether it's a health journey or career development, that you want most is being hidden by like that core wound or that biggest fear. And I don't know how that quite works on a annual basis, like with reference to the year, but it is, if it's going to be the year of the dragon, go and find your gold. is where I wanted to put that. It's like, okay, well, you're going to have dragon energy around. What are you most afraid of? The thing, it's standing in the way of the thing that you most desire, definitionally. And I can't think of examples of my own life where that isn't true. I think it's one of the potent components of it as an archetype. I've been rereading my Joseph Campbell of late, and I think that's why I'm kind of stuck on like hero's journey, dragons, golden treasure style archetypes. But it's still there. Like if it's in the air, House of the Dragons coming back, next installment of June, which is sort of dragony. It's in the
Oh, I
air.
mean, I love House of the Dragon for depicting the way that that the dragon in terms of eclipses, the eclipse dragon, which is not the only dragon, but a meaningful dragon in astrology. The way that you see eclipses and rises and falls from power, that's a huge thing in history. Is you can yeah, like eclipses and rising and falling from power is a huge thing. And then the implication, of course, is that, that's the dragon. And then it's really nice to see a show where the dragons are explicit in the
Yeah,
rises and falls from power and the like nasty, the nasty power struggles.
yeah, I loved it.
So,
I
but
liked it more
from,
than Game of Thrones. Yeah,
yeah, by the end of the first season, I was really into it. I thought it started off a little wobbly. Um, the what was I going to say? But back to what you're saying about more the hero's journey dragon, where you don't. It's not who can ride the most dragons that wins, right? Or who can ride the biggest dragon. It's the dragon. The dragon conceals or both conceals and blocks the sought after treasure,
yes,
right? And so dragons are also identified with fear, right? Like that
yeah,
which you fear most, which naturally has a fantastic and often composite face, right? Dragons are by nature chimeric, right? Like it's not a big alligator, right? It's like, well, it's kind of a big alligator, but it's got wings and maybe it breathes fire and this and that. Different dragons in different lands, but the face of fear is always, always is a chimeric composite of literally what you are afraid of most. Um, yeah.
no,
And so I
love it.
think that works.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
certainly this will be a big year for fear. Again, first half especially. The first half has the first half has two pretty distinct features that distinguish it from the second half. One is Mars just hitting everything. It's basically Mars hitting all of the slower moving planets, the indicators of longer arcs, right? So we have in February Mars conjunct Pluto. Um, in early April we have Mars conjunct Saturn, and then we get in May, we get Mars conjunct Rahu or the dragon's head, and then it's a little bit into H2, but then in mid July we get Mars conjunct Uranus,
yeah.
and so and of course we get Mars conjunct Neptune. Where's it? End of March. or sorry, end of April. But we get Mars conjoining all these things, and that, Mars is it's the activated adrenalized version of whatever that thing is doing, right? It's very difficult to remain neutral in the martial domain, right? Because there's all the dynamics of attack, defend, freeze, flee, et cetera, et cetera. And so what's happening at the same time of that as that, which is also like a distinct H1 characteristic, is that we have very large pileups of planets in the same sign over and over again. And so, for example, like some of the smallest of which will be merely 3 or 4 planets. And so January we get Mercury, Venus, Mars, and then Pluto and maybe a little Sun in Capricorn. Then we get Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Pluto in Aquarius in February. March has Saturn, Neptune, Mercury, Venus, Mars in Pisces. And so we just keep getting those until we get our last big pileup, which is in June, which is a massive Gemini pileup. And so and what that means, right, is everything is going on in one place, right? It's like everything's happening here and then everything's happening here. And so that pulls a lot of attention, right? And from a chart prognostication perspective, if you're looking at your chart, it's like what does it mean when everything is in one place and then everything is in the next place, right? You get both an individual and collective activation that provides enough concentration of force in each individual area for a lot to happen.
Yeah, we've spoken about that in reference to my own inklings about what my life's going to be like in the first few months, and I've been trying to desperately throw different cards, including my own, to get some view on being able to travel certain places for the prayer course that's starting. And it's just been, I think I mentioned, the most classic off the shelf central casting bad card readings, just like all swords and death and tower. And it's like, all right, I fucking get it. And it doesn't matter which way I ask the question. Like I'm trying to sneak my question in with another one. It's still coming back with like how many times, like, don't go, what do you want from me? And then I look at the space with it. I'm like, okay, but like, this is my coping mechanism. Yeah. So that's what people should do then. They should work out as we move through these signs where they hit their chart and go, well, probably in January, you're going to be dealing with a whole bunch of family crap and you're going to be dealing with a whole bunch of house or neighbor crap like next month and so on, depending on where it is. Is there a way we can turn that into like the focus and the energy is going to be pulled into wherever that is in your life?
Right. Well, so one way, I guess, two ways to think about that or to operationalize that is one, positively to make use of that. If all of the focus is going to be in one area for about a monthish long projects,
True.
right? Like where it's like, okay, that's the focus for Sun's time in Capricorn. Then I'm finally going to do all of the blah 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 stuff when it's in Aquarius. Then all of the Pisces stuff. So like literally making use of that, of all of the energy is in one place anyway, right? And then two, the like sort of the negative way to use that is to realize like while you're in the middle of one thing where it's everything is about this, oh, next month it's everything is going to be somewhere else, and then everything's going to be somewhere else. That like even if like a period is particularly heavenly or hellish or whatever, everything's moving on, within a month. And so it's like these very focused month-ish long chapters are just how the first half of the year is built. Things spread out during the second half of the year.
Yeah. Because so that tracks exactly for me with Capricorn essentially being the farm, right? Because like I did some Lenormand cards to try and get to an exhibition during Capricorn season, and it was like cards, left hand cards to go, right hand cards to stay. And it was literally the cards to stay were stars, house, bear. And it's literally the stars are telling you to protect the house, like robust mother bear house because of stars. So, and I now have don't go anywhere in Capricorn season. You have chores to do because boy, howdy do we. And that makes me feel good about my typical travel FOMO that actually, no. Just clean up your goddamn, speaking of Jordan Peterson, room/farm. Just like Capricorn the shit out of your farm. All right. I feel good about that personally. All right. That's the end of the show, everyone. I've worked out what I can do at the beginning of the year.
Well, and let me say something about the very first one of those, right? The Capricorn one. The Capricorn one is, all other things being equal, way better and more useful than the other 5 clusters this year. So Mars will be in Capricorn with the Sun, which then gets joined by Mercury and Venus. But the Mars in Capricorn part is really important. Capricorn is the sign where Mars is exalted, and exalted isn't just strong. When a planet is exalted, you get like a filtered best of, right? With Mars, it can still be brutal if you don't want to, how should we say, have earned the wrath of the best of Mars. But as far as harnessing it, when it's Mars that is made to be patient and less reactive because it lives in stony Capricorn, right? And so as far and Mars, as well as the other planets that move through Capricorn, all get this nice trinal configuration to a recently stationed direct Jupiter in Taurus. So like nice support for all of that Cap stuff. And so a lot of the sort of cliched beginning of the year, getting things organized, getting a framework around things, fitting yourself back inside of a framework rather than just making it through the day. All of that stuff is doubly recommended. And if there's any way to like get a start on the year, things you're going to have to do, like the January period is quite good for that, because things get steadily more disruptive. Our maximum like crazy town, where good luck trying to just get done what you had planned, is end of March and then April. Like the crazy town is very much centered on that period of time. There's other stuff before that and after that, but that's sort of maximum. Late March, early April is the things going to plan least area, where I would expect things to go to plan least, whereas the ability to fit things to like a good ambitious plan for the first part of the year is you'll actually have help doing that in most cases.
I was thinking, because I've just finished recording a video, just a vlog about setting intentions for and like the new year rather than resolutions. There's a way of stepping into it. And I actually referenced the Capricorn energy, right? So it's that parable of the crusader coming home and passing stonemasons and asking them what they're doing. And the first one says, I'm squaring off this stone. And the second one says, I'm building a cathedral. And it's like, set the actions in Capricorn, be practical, do practical things to build a cathedral rather than cut the stone, right? Like that's using intention, that's taking care of or maximizing the available practical energy in a longer term direction. And it feels like Capricorn's the right time to do that. You still got to corner the stones, right? You still got to edge them off, but you're either edging off a stone or you're building a cathedral with the same action. And that's kind of what what I'm taking to my intentionality for 2024, is to make those moves that are the same, but in a bigger narrative, I think.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. If you can I think the challenge there is keeping the, the stone squaring connected to the cathedral, and while not losing sight of all the attention you need to do each individual stone right. Be like, yes, and to build the cathedral this month, I need to get X number of stones. But yeah, like that larger intentionality is nice. That reminds me of, what is it, Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi, who's giving advice to duelists. So basically, when you're blocking, when you're stepping, everything that you do, you're killing, right? Because that's, if you're dueling with swords, you're practicing to kill. You're not stepping to step. You're not blocking to block. All of those are just part of killing. So maybe we could say that's killing the game. To take it out of to take it in a less homicidal direction, right? But like, yes, by waking up at this time, I'm killing the game. By every little piece of footwork is I'm murdering this shit.
Nice. All right, so that's Capricorn. We will move through. We can do months or signs moving
Yeah,
forward through the rest.
let's do month/signs, because that'll bring up all of
Yeah.
the outer planets. Um, that'll give us that, because we're gonna part of this roving gang of planets moving through each sign one at a time, is that it comes to these longer arc things, right? And so which will bring a focus to how that longer arc is doing. So right after we are, so we have our Capricorn thing, and we have Pluto move back into Aquarius on, I want to say, is it the 20th? 22nd maybe of January. It is literally only a few hours after the sun moves into Aquarius. And so there actually is a Pluto Sun conjunction, but it's at 29:59 Capricorn. So that's the end. That's the last Sun conjunction for Pluto and Capricorn.
Yeah.
Right. Which has been a not lovely thing. We've had Pluto and Capricorn since about 2008. And so that has, like, quick summary. That's really opened up the past for better and worse. If you are an astrologer or an occultist, we have had almost the entire history of I would say, the entire history of quote unquote Western astrology and magic disgorged and translated to the point where using the term Western is clearly inaccurate. Like, is something that was written in what we now call Syria, in 4 AD Western, right?
Yeah.
Are things that were discussed in Alexandria 100 years before that Western? Not in a meaningful sense, but so there's been, so we've benefited immensely from this, like, digging way into the history, and sort of equally medicine and poison has been the sort of how should we say, the digging into the history of empire and power and control, to the point where that's sort of top of mind for everyone the last several years. The Saturn Pluto conjunctions in Capricorn really made that clear, where just like the weight of it's like the weight of history's sins are just like, it's hard not to carry that mentally or emotionally, just waking up every morning like everybody's thinking about it. And so we're coming to the end of that. We got a brief, roughly 6-week preview period of Pluto not in Capricorn last spring in the Northern Hemisphere, or just Q2. And that's when everybody started being afraid of AI in the future rather than being afraid of the past as it's led up to this moment. And so I would fully expect that once Pluto goes back into Aquarius, at the towards the end of January, that all of we're back to the Pluto and Cap stuff, right? We know that AI will be part of it. Aliens are a big part. The idea of aliens is a big part of Pluto and Aquarius. There's a lot there, and
Yeah.
throughout February, actually between the 5th and 16th of February, we will have Mercury and then Mars and then Venus all make their very first conjunctions to Pluto in
Wow.
Aquarius. And so
Okay,
this is
that's
important because
interesting. Yeah.
we didn't get any planets other than the moon conjoining conjoining the Pluto newly in Aquarius,
Yeah.
right? Like, nobody else has had a chance to sync up with that. So we've got, three members of the visible solar system who are all going to hit it shortly after the ingress. And so I what Pluto and Aquarius will mean to you and the world will get a big jump in clarity. That
Okay.
it will be
Yeah.
demonstrated.
All right. So I read that at the moment in Australia, there because it's the end of the year, they're trying to sneak digital ID bills through after the Christmas break that will then be voted on around then. So my vote is for something like you get the first little wink of the digital currency, digital ID, digital passport system that is being built out. You get like a jump in something like that. It'll be like a ta-da, and now we have digital IDs for whatever. Like it's the pieces aren't fully built together yet, so we won't get the whole fucking Pluto and Aquarius tyranny system in February. But my vote is for like a very definite wink, like a piece of that will be visible.
Yeah, that makes sense. They're Pluto and Aquarius approached aesthetically. It's very future dystopia. Like
Yeah,
that's the
robot communist
landscape.
overlords, mum's friendly robot factory. Yeah.
Yeah, that the like the so it's interesting with Pluto and in Aquarius. So Aquarius, like a couple other signs in a lot of older texts, are referred to not only as air signs, but they're referred to as humane signs, and humane in the sense that their totem, their mascot creature is a human creature, right? The water bearer is a human creature that's doing the pouring, as opposed to the four-footed signs like Aries, which is a ram. Um, and so, or scaled signs, right, like Pisces. And so that idea of humane for Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, and Virgo is that when planets are operating in those signs, they're going to they're going to operate on the human and then also be demonstrated by the human, right? Whereas Capricorn is considered a bestial sign, right? Like Leo is a bestial sign; it's an animal. Um, and whereas with Pluto and Aquarius, like we're looking at Plutonian alterations, mutations, alterations, whatever, to what is human,
Yeah.
right? And that's the and again with Pluto, we're always looking sort of through a veil of unknown horror, or a black mirror
Yeah.
of unknown horror, like, oh my god, that could happen. And so all of this, like, implant what is like Neuralink, cyberpunk nightmares, the nightmare vision of like the humans caged in the digital system, the humans replaced by the malevolent artificial intelligence, like all of this is very Pluto and Aquarius. The One thing that's interesting is the aliens are part of this too. This idea of being colonized or fucked with or whatever by an intelligence which is like us but not. And we've had all of this ongoing, I guess, I don't know what you would call it, like UFO talk, disclosure talk, that I haven't been able to follow. I don't know what
Yeah.
it means or what the point is, but it's happening. And what's really interesting is when I was looking at the history of Pluto and Aquarius, you also had meetings between, you had really important meetings between cultures that were totally alien to each other in the past that must have, like, for example, you have during Pluto and Aquarius, 2 times ago, you had the very first Western Europeans landing in Japan
Okay. Yeah.
accidentally. And you think about the sort of the alien technology going both ways, right? Like so much that neither had seen before, and the strange arc, like, oh, these are people too, but but it will take years to even begin bridging and understanding. And so, yeah, that's all Pluto and Aquarius stuff. One of the things that I am waiting for, and this is I don't know, history goth, Saturnian astrologer side of me. is that with Pluto, we always see, with Pluto changes signs, we always get a meaningful mutation in the image of the, how should we say, the terrorist, the murderer, like the human face of the of horror, right? Like it's like in the first Ghostbusters, like what form shall the destroyer take, is decided. And so, just super quick, Pluto and Scorpio, it was secret sex murderers who did the occult that everybody was afraid of. Pluto and Sagittarius, which shifts in 97. Oh, it's school shooters and religious zealots, right? Like it's Sagittarius. They've got a bow. They're coming from far away. Horses have legs. Pluto and Capricorn. I think the best the best example is like it's ISIS. It's the evil, like the evil people literally take over territory. And then and with Pluto and Capricorn, there's also this sense that, oh my God, we're in the empire. We're in the empire of evil, right? It's Capricornian. It's
But the horror of the system, like the establishment, like
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so with Pluto and or Pluto into Aquarius, right, we have just named a number of different potential sites for horror. But we always have a sort of archetypal moment that establishes that figure in the cultural mind, and like that future horror. So I don't know if it's like terrorism with drones, like somebody outfits 20 commercial drones with explosives and flies them into X and Y and Z, or it's a computer thing or an AI thing. But I'm curious when we'll have like the first, like, oh, this new version of Pluto is scary and does these things, and then we get like that face on it, whether
Yeah.
it's like ISIS or school shooters or sex murders or whatever. We haven't gotten that figure yet with our just
Yeah.
brief preview.
Given what like the what Socrates has for the US, my money is unfortunately on crowd-based suicide attacks. So it's like driving trucks through crowds and that kind of stuff is like the horror of the literal horror of crowds, like of like the crowd being a place of fear because it's a target is unfortunately my guess based on the archetype of what that would look like, right? So because it's either the horror of hordes, as in lots of people, or it's the horror of crowds in the sense of like I'm in a crowd, like everyone having some kind of, to some extent, justifiable agoraphobia because crowds have become a parapolitical target, I guess. That's my guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't love it. I mean, I don't love that. If that's it, I don't love it, right? But
No, well, I
it's
mean,
kind of
none of these
something
things
that,
are particularly lovable,
no,
right?
yeah, yeah, that would be it. I think the the civil unrest model, the Armstrong stuff. When I overlay that with the Pluto ingress, that is my guess. We spoke about last week that it could actually be both. It can actually be like terrorists using drones to attack a crowd, and if that's the case, it's
Yeah,
so on the nose.
I really think you're going to have some sort of recent tech upgrade to whatever the horror is.
Yeah,
Um, I feel like that's gonna, and it is gonna be Mars conjunct Pluto. So,
that was going to be the
like on
next.
what,
Yeah,
like the 13th, just in time for Valentine's Day, like 13th of February. So there's a good chance we get whatever that is.
yeah, that was
Um,
going to be my guess as well. And it's funny. I just want to build on what you just said. And God, I hope it isn't this because we're making light of it, and because
no,
we're
I know. I
not
mean,
like. Yeah, but so a good example of it, it needs for it to hit the Aquarius back wall, it needs the technological upgrade. So instead of a transit van being driven through a crowd of people, it's like a Cybertruck. It's like a
yeah,
self-driving
or
Cybertruck.
it's a van that's being remote controlled,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
that's
Yeah, yeah,
basically
yeah.
acting as a controllable zone drone.
I hope it's not a
And then
Cybertruck because I do want one. I don't. Everyone says they're ugly. I think it's like the most beautiful car I've ever seen in my fucking life. For some
that's
reason, I
I
want a Cybertruck. There we go. So, any fans out there that would like to contribute to the show, I'll take a Cybertruck, please.
They are ugly. But that's the kind of like badly, that's the sort of aesthetically offensive future we're going to get, right? Like even when there are technological upgrades, it's not going to look good.
No, no,
Um,
no, no. But
well,
in the
and so a
same way,
little
I
bit just
low key like some examples of brutalism. I look at the Cybertruck and go, oh, yeah, I'm kind of into it. I'm into its like 1994 computer game aesthetic. Like, yeah,
that's funny. I don't. Yeah, while during this rather horrific Q4, I have been spending a lot of time in my mind in Florence in the late 16th century or late
fair
15th
enough.
century, which which is extremely corrupt and violent, but the architecture is
It's
much
pretty.
better.
Yeah. And they had,
I've
nice
sort
big
of
velvet
like,
hats. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, I don't know, like it's sort of like in the West has like has aesthetics really, have we done better than like Florence in 1490? Like we really gone past that, or was that kind of the high water mark aesthetically?
Definitely one of them. Definitely one of them. Yes, that
But
was a fun place.
yeah, I don't know if it would have been fun, but it's
Oh
great
no,
to look at.
I'm sorry. Should have opened that sentence with "You have now got me reminiscing about the first time I was in Florence, and that was fun." But it's a different era. Like I went to a Campari bar that I heard about from Nigella Lawson on Twitter, and I'm like, okay, that's like my we did the bougie art stuff. We did the Vasari corridor and all the rest of it. But my first memory was going to the Campari bar that Nigella Nigella Lawson mentioned. Anyway, travel straight.
Yeah. No, but someday I will have some local wild boar lasagna while pretending that I'm dining with both Ficino and Machiavelli.
Very nice. Very nice.
But
So
Pluto and
yeah,
Aquarius. So Pluto and Aquarius. So this is like this ingress at the beginning of the year is the almost for keepsies one.
yeah,
We have during sort of late Q3 and the beginning of Q4, we have one last roughly 2 month move back into Capricorn, and then it's done with Capricorn forever. So this is the like almost it's almost going to stick this time. We're going to get a much more this is much more like the season finale, or excuse me, the season premiere for Pluto, and then episode 2 is actually a flashback, right, which happens later this year. But we're starting the new season
yeah,
with Pluto and Aquarius like early this year, and again, that's about a 20-year arc, right?
yeah.
Like, and that's where all of the that's where all of the like dystopian cyberpunk sort of textures and visions, like all of that fits very naturally into this section of time.
Yeah.
And without going on too long about it, to say that Uranus's movement into Gemini next year, and it'll be a Gemini for 7 years. And so Pluto and Uranus will be in a trine. They'll be working together, both in humane signs. I think that's where we get that's where we see a lot of the, again, like cyberpunk dystopia stuff become not just mostly here, but like really, really here.
Yeah. I would also add to that that it's a good example of the red herringness of now, because I don't think we get through Uranus and Gemini without like EMPs and losing chunks of the internet, so that the infrastructure for the
Oh yeah.
Pluto and Aquarius tyranny gets a few kicks in the privates
And
through that
well, I'm
process.
glad you brought that up, because that, when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, what does the like terror, horror, murder, what does the like the scary bad person figure resolve into during the Pluto and Aquarius era? And the like the attack in the virtual, like the virtual terrorist or the virtual whatever, in addition to using those technologies to attack people in the real world, the like, I was like, we can't, like, there have to be like computer viruses that are twice as scary and destructive, or like a whole magnitude of order of magnitude stronger, like something like that. And that's also part of the any fictional sort of cyberpunk dystopia vision. They all have generally some sort of crisis in the virtual world that the world had to adapt to and is now in its shape now because that threat came about. Like the great crash of blank in pretty much all of the cyberpunk things. Like we'll get that. I'm not saying this year. I doubt it would be this year, but like that's part of this arc too.
Agreed. So I mean, you know this stuff better, but when I look at Pluto ingresses, there is a lot of the burning off of the corruption is kind of front loaded. So 2008 crisis and so on, like, or at least the
Hmm.
unveiling of the corruption, but to some extent burning off. And I kind of think that's what I am, an unashamed technophile, generally speaking. So when I look at the length of Pluto in Aquarius, it makes sense to me that we're going to get the tyranny front loader, the digital passport, digital ID, CBDC control system, but going to it's not going to look like that, certainly by the end of it. Like the attempted imposition is a disaster, and then we look again at how we use digital platforms to weave and engage at the level of the crowd, at the level of community, and that looks less tyrannical. There's no reason we shouldn't have a digital currency, except for the fact that the people building it are psychopaths who are like trying to control and depopulate the planet, right? So there's actually no reason for it. So if we can get through this idiotic imposition first, and I see that like Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini to me is like yes, the cyberpunk battles, and by the time we get into the next decade, I think we have a cleaner opportunity to look at the best of that Aquarian energy and delivery. But that's kind of my point, because I think the Five Eyes countries will get further along with the digital ID and digital currency in this coming year than people realize. I think it'll roll out. I don't think it'll have the controls in it just yet. They'll be built into the back end, but I think they'll roll out a digital CBDC and get people used to it. And then all of a sudden it's not going to work on meat and cigarettes or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I
Well,
think
so
we tumble ungraciously through that tyranny, and we have to, so that we can build better at the other side.
yeah, and that reminds me, one of the, I guess one way to think about Aquarius's significations is Aquarius is very experimental. That's part of why you get all of the like sci-fi textures around it. And so if we combine Pluto with like the horror of the experiment, the like, oh God, we rolled this out for X number of people, or I'm thinking like the one image is like cyborg experiments, like, oh, we replaced like RoboCop, right? Where it's like, I don't know, should we have saved this person, da da da, but like the horror of the experiment, and like, did it work, did it not work, and then having conducted something and then realizing that it was a bad idea with a human cost. I feel like that's another important piece of this Pluto and Aquarius, like where the horror is and where the mistakes get made.
I like that.
Should we
Again, I don't
have
like that. I think that's a good a good way of
right, it sucks,
articulating it.
but
Yeah, it does suck. So we'll have a digital octoparrot telling you that you can't buy cigarettes, at least initially, and then things will be all right. All
or
right.
they'll
So
just be
that's like Mars.
they'll be different.
Yeah. So that's Feb, right? Or is there anything else to say in Feb
Hmm.
after the Mars Pluto conjunction, or even more to say about that?
Yeah, I mean that's it's all of this stuff is relevant. All this Pluto and Aquarius stuff is relevant because we have a bunch of planets conjoining it in the same sign. Like everything is there with Pluto.
Yeah.
So I like Venus's attitude towards Pluto, Mars's attitude towards Pluto, Mercury's attitude towards Pluto. Right, like they're all those planets are going to be discovering Pluto newly in Aquarius. Right, so like we could say the Mars is like, oh, this for military applications. Venus says, oh, this is going to change relationships this way. Mercury has 100 things to say about Pluto and Aquarius. So yeah, all this stuff, right? And we could say probably a lot of people will be freaking out about a lot of things. It'll probably start with the AI stuff, right? That's like the launch point for freaking out about technology in the future.
No, cool. All right. So March, April.
Yeah, well, like so, end of February, things start sliding into Pisces, and then most of March, end of February, most of March is all the planets heading into Pisces. And what's in Pisces? Saturn and Neptune are in Pisces. And so we talked about this time before and time before that last. Um, and so this is two things, right? One is Neptune. Neptune's been in Pisces since 2011, 2012. And then we'll go into Aries next spring. And then it'll pop back into Pisces and then go back into Aries. But we begin the transition into the next sign next year, 2025. This is the last uninterrupted Neptune and Pisces arc, 2024. And in addition to that, it just so happens that here at the end of Neptune and Pisces, we also have Saturn there, right? And which is pretty easy to think about, symbolically. Saturn is all about ends and boundaries and outcomes, right? And so we have, if we just think for a second about what is the Neptune and Pisces arc been about, right? And so Neptune and Pisces has been amazing for dissolving the boundaries of consensus reality. Like there was a normal 15 years ago or so, for better and worse. But the as we say, like the number, as we say, the number of story, the 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 variety of stories that people now believe about the world is much greater. We have like an overgrown garden of realities rather than like a few boring realities. It used to be there was like boring reality garden and then there was like counter garden, maybe a couple counter gardens, whereas now it's just all overgrown. It's not, there's certainly not like there's certainly, it would be hard to simplify things into culture and counterculture in the same
Yeah.
way these days.
It's
Neptune
super
Pisces has
interesting.
been,
This morning, like I was talking to a friend about my favorite camera vlogger. So my favorite camera review, technology review YouTube channel. He's a flat earther. And so, which is cute, right? Because like I somehow trust him to give me good advice on the right cameras to buy, but he thinks the Earth is flat, and that's a real like Neptune and Pisces moment. I was going to say what's been interesting to me is the legalization of marijuana and psychedelics.
Mhm.
By the time Neptune leaves, well done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's great if if you live in um, an imaginative fringe, right? Like if you like as a magician or an astrologer, or like a psychedelics advocate or whatever, you're in a much different position now than you were 10 years ago. In
true.
many ways, much better, right? And so, but all of that is like we're at the end of that arc, right? Is there more opening up that we need to do? Um, right. If
None.
anything, it's sort of
Yeah.
like, I don't know, maybe magic would be better if not everybody thought that they were a wizard, right? Maybe,
Yes. Yeah.
maybe astrology would be better if not everybody, decided to go professional within 3 months.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and
we're
yeah,
moving
and
into like
so
infinite permutations of boot camp, right? Like, explore ways to, yeah, all right, that's pretty good. Get up off the couch, stoner. I'm into it.
yeah, well, and like Neptune and Pisces, it was, I would say it was great for the first half, right? Because it's just like it Neptune and Pisces is so interested in like opening you up not only to possible realities you hadn't considered. It's also essentially like compassionate and like, hey, maybe more types of people are okay than I was raised to believe. And so lots of really nice sort of expansion of the sphere of human rights within this period in the West. But then, it's like I don't know how people can be, how should I say, I do know how people could be more compassionate, but like compassion is almost hardened into a rhetoric. Just
Yep.
like the people getting into astrology is no longer exciting. People getting into magic, it's all like there's so many indications that like, okay, we need to move on, right? Like there's some good work done here, but maybe it's time to move on. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's we're towards the very end of Neptune and Pisces, where we're seeing, and Saturn's really doubly showing this, right? What gets left what gets like left cut in stone, right? And so like, no, psychedelics are now legal in these circumstances, and they weren't before, and that's not going to get overturned next year. Like in the United States, like gay marriage is legal now. It wasn't before. Like it's this great wave, and some of it's just like a wave that passes through things, and then some things are the same after the wave passes, but then some things are structurally changed, right? Um, so there's that. Um, Part of the Saturn being there, right? Because Saturn has its own job to do other than sort of judging which Neptune things get to be permanent and which we're just done with. Um, and so, as we discussed in previous installments, Saturn has a really hard time in Pisces. It's really hard to keep everything organized, to keep control, to have everything locked down and lockstep with Saturn and Pisces, right? Like, and as we talked about at the beginning, or about a year ago, right, when we were looking at the Saturn moving into Pisces in March of 2023, it's a very center cannot hold energy, where there's just a lot like I believe I use the term mess over and over again. And if you look at the world now, it's kind of a mess. It's not that the empire won or the rebels won. Like, you can't resolve it into a simple storyline. It's like things are just kind of, what is Leonard Cohen said, things are gonna slide in all directions, right, for this period, um, which is, good in some ways, bad in other ways. Um, and another
I
thing that
don't
I
love it in my
said,
fifth. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, I hear you. I don't love it on top of all my Pisces shit. Um, as it first occurred, as I got used to it, it went into Pisces 2 days after my birthday this year. It just felt like an immense sort of leviathan weight. It felt like being weighed down by being chained to a gigantic, sad, under the sea creature, right? Like the weight of hauling the leviathan around felt like a sea monster made of like a goth sea monster who was having a bad day.
Well, it turned me into that sea monster. That was the thing. I remember you trying to console me because I'm like, no, it's in my house of like fun and creativity. And you're like, yeah, but that just means, you'll have a word count and structure. And I'm like, no, it's the end of fun. And Paraguay was the end of fun. I still have a word count with no motherfucking fun. So I am that sea monster. It me.
Well, I've always kind of been one, so it was
True.
literally just more of the same for me. But my condolences go out to you who
Yes, there's
don't
a
have much
children's book about
experience
like the
in sea
loneliest or
monster,
the
emo sea
saddest sea
monster
monster.
form.
Yeah. There's some kind of like
But
love. Ooh, I don't want to say Lovecraft for children because I do think he was for children. But something like that. Some kind of like cute, like
mhm.
emo Cthulhu. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, there we
Yeah,
go.
it's very like cosmic horror.
Yeah,
And of course, Call of Cthulhu was published while Saturn was in Pisces.
that tracks. Definitely.
And so that what I was going to just follow up on was, what I said at the beginning of last year. Hey, Saturn's going to be in Pisces. It means some mediocre, not great things over here and there, but we do get really cool fantasy world stuff, enduring works of imagination, um, published during Saturn and Pisces. And so, Cthulhu is one of them. They won back in a lot of great music. Basically, it's mid 60s and it's also mid 90s, right?
Yeah.
Was the mid 90s like a place where people look to for inspiration for organization? No, nowhere.
No, it wasn't.
But a lot of great music, a lot of good. The first, uh, what do you call it? The first of the what is it? Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones books was published then,
Buffy.
which makes
Oh,
me
I just
think
would go.
that
You say mid
George
'90s. I
actually.
say Buffy. Yeah.
Right. Buffy. And so what I mean by enduring works of imagination, things that people remember, like works of imagination that are worth going back to. Um,
Yeah.
and so two things about that. One, I haven't reviewed all the books published this year, certainly. But in video games, Baldur's Gate 3, which is a fucking Dungeons and Dragons game, won every award ever and literally stirred up controversy in the gaming world because the heads of other gaming studios were like, it's unfair that this is so good. This is going to set expectations too high in the industry, right? Which is the best. I realize that that is a compliment that I will now work hard to
Oh,
achieve.
yeah.
Instead of being universally praised,
Possible? Is that on
doing
offer? Yeah.
yeah, like to do something so wonderful that people are like, that's unfair. Now that now people are going to expect that. And literally a work of fantasy. People best role playing game in decades. People are saying. I'm just started my campaign. I'll let you know what I think. But what's interesting about that is that that's been coupled with the sort of apocalyptic breaking apart of the Disney imagination verse.
Yes. Yeah.
Disney, the company is in huge financial difficulties right now. They had so many flops where basically their whole Marvel thing, which was just a money printer for a long time, is now losing money. All the Star Wars things are losing money. Disney rolling out its old, like sort of redoing its older properties, which also used to print money. It's all losing money. And so,
Think about that. Quite a Hollywood story and a Disney story, right? Because like Neptune leaving Pisces is like libs of TikTok calling time on the nonsense, right? So, and if you look, that's what Disney did. Disney destroyed itself by getting like too much Neptune in Pisces, and Saturn comes along to be like, okay, well, we need to cut this down to size. You don't make any money, right? Right. That's
and Saturn
it's a Hollywood story as well. Like Disney's just the worst example of a dream factory.
Yeah, it's really
caught in its own delusions.
Right. Well, and it stopped, I would say, they stopped being works of imagination, right? It started being, okay, like, well, what's the demographics? What do the, like, what do we, what does the machine say we should do in order to make money? Right. What is like, and it doesn't feel like imagination. It feels like, oh, of course, that's what the next movie is about. Like there's no, it's using, it's sort of like squeezing the last bits of life out of things that were once works of imagination that people responded to. And so it was really interesting to see, to see the Saturn and Pisces happen, where again, when I looked at it, I was like, oh, well, this is when a lot of great works happen. I didn't look at what died or what did Saturn cull during that period, but it makes perfect sense that Saturn would be would be giving you good things by punishing things that aren't good brutally, right?
Yes.
Saturn comes in,
And
you're like,
I
oh,
consider,
that's not
it's quite
imaginative.
true.
You're broke now.
Yeah. And I want Saturn to kill Indiana Jones and Star Wars because they shouldn't live like this, right? Like it's actually a repricing so that I can like Indiana Jones and Star Wars again by killing it. Like mercy kill, please take it away from Kathleen Kennedy because we all saw that amazing South Park. But like I've been sitting with like the ending part of it is a mercy killing, literally like, okay, we got to call time on this because we can't have Kathleen Kennedy make another Indiana Jones film. Like it would just, reality will collapse, right? And that's good. I need them to die so that I stop making them. Yeah.
And it didn't take, it took what? It took Pluto or Saturn and Pisces 6 months to do that.
Pretty much.
Like it moved in March. So 6, 7, 8 months. Like Disney has gotten the consistent awful feedback. I'm sure that next year, and especially the next year's movies, will have at least a little bit of imagination in them.
This is what Bob Iger is hinting at. He's hinting at like we might have made some operational mistakes and to come back and take the reins in some respect, which I think is probably a good idea. But I was actually like the rapidity of Saturn's work is quite impressive. Like everyone came for Disney, right? So it wasn't just South Park. It was the leaking of the pictures of the replacement dwarves with, as Tim Dillon said, they look like they gathered up a bunch of junkies from under a Portland overpass, right? You couldn't find a "it's time for you to move on" Neptune image that was better than the 7 dwarf replacements for Snow White. It's like within 6 months, everyone came for Disney and cut it down to size. I think it is a, oh, sorry, moving the mic. It's like a record-breaking loss year for them, which is quite impressive. Like billions and billions and billions. That's what you do with a scythe.
Right. Yeah. No. It's so in retrospect, it's almost too obvious. Like, okay, if Neptune is imagination and Saturn's coming for that, right? Then we have the culling, right?
Yeah.
But it's exciting. It's exciting for the future. It's
And
literally laying the ground
yeah.
for better work. And
Because
of course, and you
I've
look
been
at,
keeping my eyes out for
go ahead.
like your promise that there'll be like good stuff coming through. And the best one that I found, which I mentioned a bunch of times, is Foundation becoming a TV series. Now, first series was outside of Saturn and Pisces, but they've been just greenlit for I think 2 more. So like the majority of the Apple TV show Foundation, but based on Isaac Asimov, is going to be Saturn and Pisces. And for me, because it is just like perfectly produced in the sense of like the sets look fantastic, the clothing is tight. It's more structured than Game of Thrones, which is what it reminds me of. But that just had a huge fucking budget. This is just like really well crafted, like cut, And that was my Saturn in Pisces that I was looking for, was Foundation.
Nice. Yeah. And again, we're only, let's see, what is this? 12. We're, in the 9th month of Saturn and
Yes.
Pisces,
Yeah.
and you get about 30.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I will just add with Pluto and Capricorn versus Pluto and Aquarius. So Game of Thrones was Pluto and Capricorn. It was an imaginary, what do you call it? Sort of a Machiavellian, an imaginary Machiavellian past, right? Like that's Pluto in Capricorn. Whereas Pluto and Aquarius, I think the way it'll show up in culture is, again, a lot of the cyberpunk stuff that never got made, like Neuromancer never got made. Pluto and Aquarius will make sure Neuromancer gets made,
Right.
but it's like dark sci-fi stuff. It's
There
the
is,
3-body problem.
yeah,
There was a Warhammer 40K show just greenlit by Amazon. Warhammer
yeah, yeah,
40K is very Pluto and
it
Aquarius.
is. Did I imagine, like, because this has gone backwards and forwards, there's an invisible series that keeps getting greenlit backwards and forwards as well.
Oh,
That would
really?
be very, but like, yes, there have been rumors that,
That
oh, they're
that would
going
be
to do it with
totally
an
be
art.
Pluto and Aquarius.
Yeah, exactly my point. So at some stage, at some stage, fingers crossed for that one. Awesome. So what does that go to? So now we're in March, April.
Yeah, so March brings all the planets to this Saturn Neptune thing in Pisces, right? So it's all the Pisces stuff in your chart. Just, also as a mood, right? Everything in Capricorn is such a pragmatic, disciplined, kind of onerous mood. Everything in Aquarius is such a, oh my God, like what's the future going to be like? Where are we going mood? Everything in Pisces is, a half submerged, like more intuitive feeling, imaginative sort of mood. And then it's end of, excuse me, it's end of March, right around the equinox. We get the sun into Aries, and this is like, let's just say end of March to, let's just say end of, towards the end of March, towards the end of April is our sort of max dynamic chaos confusion period. We get a pair of eclipses, end of March, beginning of April. They're in Libra and Aries. And then that is happening at the same time as a Mercury retrograde, right? Which is just like, let's add confusion to the to the normal eclipse dragon time. And then while this is happening, Mars makes a perfect conjunction to Saturn in Pisces. And Mars Saturn conjunctions are sort of most reliable doom clocks in
Yes.
astrology. We get a Mars Saturn conjunction every 2 years. For example, we got a Mars Saturn conjunction in Aquarius in April of 2020, which, like, here's the here's here's what danger, here's what terror and danger and fear look like for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
And and then we got another one in the same sign in 2022. So in terms of the faster moving cycles catching up with the slower ones, this will be our first Mars Saturn conjunction in Pisces, right? And that happens literally while the solar eclipse is happening in Aries. And so we've got, Mars Saturn's just good for doom, eclipse season and Mercury retrograde all happening at the same time. So, when I said like, this is the period where you want to leave the most, how should we say, like the most room to maneuver, right? Like be
Yes.
tightly regimented and have very specific goals for January. But like for April, like leave some room to maneuver because there's probably a lot of surprises. And even if your own life isn't super chaotic during that period, like the world around you will be adjusting to a
The
lot of
yeah.
chaos.
The major turning point in the economic confidence model for next year is May 6th, May 7th, and it's a big one. It's like a multi-year one. So it's one of the areas where you're getting like a 70% overlap with the longer cycles because like end of May major
Well,
turning point is also like a big chaos in April situation. Beginning of May major
yeah.
turning point is like
Well,
a
but May is not as intense as April, but there's plenty going on in May too.
yeah, yeah.
One thing to note about the Mars Saturn in Pisces, um, I wouldn't be so. It seems astrology is literal enough of the time that I would be very shocked if we aren't looking at tragedy, war type things in the water. That like naval matters become very important that month and probably stay off on important for quite some time after that.
Yes, I
In
would
the
say
same.
like yeah. We still can't shoot down the Kinzhal missiles, and we're moving. By we, I mean the West. We're moving aircraft carrier groups into range for Kinzhal missiles and picking fights all through the Middle East. And it's like, yeah, yeah, I can. Let's not be surprised if that's what that is. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean all of the tension around Taiwan like is essentially naval,
Yeah.
until the moment that it's more than that. But yeah, so that just kind of points at, do you think there's any danger in the waters that's brewing, right? So so anyway, so that's end of March, April, and then literally while that's happening, we're moving towards the exact conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus. And so this is similarly meaningful, but not like blatantly difficult. Right, like Mars Saturn's blatantly difficult. Eclipses are often blatantly difficult. Mercury retrograde is blatantly annoying. Whereas the Jupiter Uranus is really interesting because this is the last full year of Uranus and Taurus, right? Started in 2018, changes over next year, and it's the only time that Jupiter hits it, right? And Jupiter has among one of Jupiter's main powers is to confirm and support and strengthen and often legitimize the significations of another planet that it's mixed with, right? It's sort of like having a mentor or what is the word? Somebody who does a boon giver, somebody who helps the protagonist do the thing they were already trying to do. And so, with a couple of things with Jupiter, Uranus, and Taurus. One, since Jupiter entered Taurus in May of 2023, um, here in America, the Jupiter has super boosted labor. Here, we've had so many strikes and so many really excellent resolutions, depending on the industry, but a lot of excellent resolutions, outcomes for labor. We had the much publicized Hollywood writers and actors thing, but we also had a ton of auto workers. We had nurses. And there's more that's happened. There's more on the way. And so, this Jupiter, Uranus, and Taurus has ended up being sort of the best time to strike, probably for a while, and to try to get a better outcome for labor. So I'm sure we'll be seeing some of that. Um, Uranus, one thing that I'm sure it involves, but I'm not sure what it looks like, is that Uranus and Taurus has been very consistently part of the crypto story since 2018. This is not the whole crypto story, right, which began way earlier than 2018, but 2018 was the sort of the collective, everybody started taking it seriously. It was no longer just that one thing that your weird friend was into and was trying to get you to put money into. Um, and this is consistent with past iterations of Uranus and Taurus, which have a lot to do with currency, right? And so this is this version of disrupting and disrupting currency and stores of value, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So that has something to do with the crypto narrative. Um, and again, I don't know if that's like, you're the Fed coin or, I don't know. But I would just point to that time and that configuration and that topic.
Yeah.
And so that's end of April, but really they're very close before that, and then they're very close for almost all of May, right? So it's all there, and you have just like this parade of planets. You get you're gonna get Sun, Mercury, Venus, all going into Taurus with Jupiter and Uranus. So you get all of that focus on that. Also worth noting is that Uranus and Taurus, the last several years especially, has consistently been correlated with big fluctuations in commodities. Like, oh, well, we can't get those, so they're 3 times as expensive now,
Yeah.
right? Or like, oh, actually, the shortage is over, so prices drop by half. Like all of this, it's Taurus stuff, and so this high volatility that Uranus always brings is sort of most jarring when it's in that practical earthen realm of Taurus and dinner and energy inputs and shit like that. One more thing, just thinking about the Uranus and Taurus story. So Uranus generally shows you what the kind of like what counterculture looks like during a given period. And so with since again late 2018, Uranus and Taurus, it's sort of like, what is the cool rebellious thing to do? I'm gonna raise my own chickens, right? Like I'm going to do something rural and weirdly stable and wholesome, right? Like that's kind of been the punk rock thing, which is very strange. Uranus meshes with Taurus in a very awkward way, right? Like, what's what's the most punk rock thing you can do? Move out to the country,
Yeah.
and ignore the internet. And so that's almost at an end, right? Then we'll get Uranus and Gemini, which looks more like more like the like late 80s hacker in the movie who was like, what are you doing? I'm hacking, right? I'm hacking the system. I'm hacking the mainframe. Um,
I'm desktop publishing my way to hack the mainframe. Yeah, let's do it.
yeah. So yeah. Anyway, so this is like, like it's a sort of a high point for Uranus and Taurus. We'll see what that looks like. What else? Anyway, yeah. And so April into May, it's just all that Taurus stuff. It's all the Uranus story, which is again not quite over, but almost over. So what do commodities prices look like? What do energy prices look like? What do food prices look like? What's going on with money? Um, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then our last chunk of the first half is everything goes into Gemini. And what's interesting is that just as everything is going into Gemini, sorry, one more thing about May. So while everything's in Taurus, Mars is not. Mars leaves Pisces, leaves that Saturn co-presence, but then goes into Aries where it's Mars and the dragon's head. It's
Mhm.
Mars and Rahu. And so even though we just did the eclipses and we did the solar eclipse in Aries, there's Mars is trailing behind, and Mars Rahu is an extremely inflammatory combination, right? So like that doesn't chill things out in the slightest. The Mars is very strong in Aries, very reactive, very aggressive. And then Rahu, or that eclipse point, the north node, the dragon's head, kaput draconis, tends to just like it's sort of like taking the way too much testosterone 22-year-old Mars in Aries, and then also giving him some roids, right? And
Yeah.
maybe a little meth, like a little meth and roid cocktail. Mars in Aries is more than enough Mars by itself. And then the conjunction with the North Node is the North Node in Mars is considered in the Vedic tradition that I've studied in and I'm a part of to be one of the most destructive, potentially destructive combinations, because it mixes the confusion you get with eclipse energy, where it's like, oh, I can't see where I'm going because the sun disappeared, right? The obscuration has to be part of thinking about eclipses and eclipse energy, but it's that obscuration or being deluded or fooled or we can just say confused, but with the aggressive, potentially dangerous energy of Mars, right? Where you get, it's like, what's word, it's one thing to be enraged, but then to be enraged at the wrong thing, right? Or to be lashing out blindly. It's that kind of potentially dangerous cocktail.
Which, looking at the other
So
transits,
that
looking at the Armstrong model, it's like the April May is a dramatic and unlovely geopolitical change that will result in things like like increase in prices and inflation and so on, like the Jupiter act, embiggening the surprise bitch money energy of Uranus and Taurus.
mhm.
And you think we're having, even Australia sending warships to the Red Sea now, and the Armstrong model has the possibility of by the end of this cycle, like 2028 and so on, there not even being a Suez Canal, and things are like they can get that bad from a war perspective. But that speaks to like naval shit, martial rage, and concomitant dramatic increases in prices of everything, particularly if it's in the area where 40% of the world's trade flows through, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so a little bit of maybe one way to think about April May is it's a little bit like, or it's there's a meaningful parallel to October, November this year, where like the shit got started in October, right?
yeah.
But then it did not end in November. It was
Mm.
basically like eclipses plus Mars shit in October, and then November was just super strong Mars in Scorpio, and so all none of the fires burnt out, right?
Yes.
Just because there wasn't a new conflict. It was like, no, it's still burning. And so we've got some of the same where like April gets it going and then it continues through most of May. It's towards the end of May that we have like a very definite sort of shift. Jupiter moves into Gemini with the Sun and Mercury and Venus, and then Mars gets done with Aries a little later. And so it's everything moves, or almost, or a lot of things. We've got Mercury, Venus, Sun, Jupiter, all in Gemini. And so and then Mars getting done with the rampage. And so it's a very big sort of tonal shift. So it makes sense that whatever it is April, May, and then Gemini is very thinky, very adaptive, very let's talk about like it's very much about figuring out what's going on and how to adapt. um Another thing that sort of suggests that it's also like a pause and a reset is that the sun makes both Mercury and Venus conjoin the sun in Gemini. So literally, you won't see the planets. They'll Mercury and Venus will be visibly, or especially Venus. Excuse me. Ugh, there will be a bunch of planets that are visible just before dawn for a lot of the year, moving up to that point. But then when we get Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter all conjoining the sun means they're not visible day or night, and they're resetting the cycle. Mercury does a conjunction with the sun 3 times a year, not a big deal. With Jupiter, there's one conjunction with the sun every year. And then with Venus, you only get a conjunction with the sun every year and a half. So that's 3 different cycles of 3 different lengths, all resetting within that period. And so, like, it does feel like a break. And that also means that they're changing horizons. The Mercury and Venus, towards the end of June and then into July, they're going to be evening rising, right? And they'll be in a different hemisphere of the sky than Mars. Like that's what breaks up the like giant roving gang that we have for the first half of the year. So yeah, Gemini time is a very definite sort of split off from the first 5 months.
So that's as we sort of get to the end of H1. I was going to ask because this is a really sucky. I mean, it's sucky for the next few years because of what's going on, but a whole bunch of Mars shit January, February, and then this surprise bitch big escalation configuration in that like April, May bit. What do
With
you like
plenty
the
of
best?
Mars shit there.
That's true. Yeah. What do you
Yeah, I
like
mean,
the
it's
best?
plenty. Like it's. I I'm really looking forward to January.
Hmm.
Like even though I don't know, it's like it's so cliched to be like, I'm going to get a jump on the year and really get my diet and exercise together and my work, all that boring shit. It's really good for all that boring shit.
Yeah.
And it's such an opportunity to really make like a concentrated month of progress before the bullshit, before like the
Yeah.
disruptive bullshit comes in.
So that's important, everyone. Look forward to January, but fucking use it because you're gonna
Yeah,
need it. Yeah.
take all of the obnoxious New Year's resolution stuff seriously this time.
Yeah.
And another sort of quiet signal for that is Mercury stations direct on New Year's, right? So it's
True.
like,
Yeah.
okay, it's it's
Yeah.
literally time to go forward.
Yeah. And also, so okay, I
For
might
me,
actually push back. I have a video on setting intentions. I might do a bit and add to it intentions for 2024 to say like do this after New Year's. You know what I mean? Like get Mercury pointing in that direction and head into it. So
yeah,
I'm feeling
it's
this, right? Like I'm feeling the leaning into the stuff that people often disparage about Capricorn, like the practicalities of it. Like James and I are literally looking at chopping wood and carrying water in January because we've like laid in the firewood that needs to be stacked in the shed, and we need to test like the bushfire pump stuff. So like we're moving water and carrying wood, and I'm super looking forward to it. I wasn't here in spring. I was in Paraguay, so the raised beds are a Jumanji nightmare. That I'm actually like really looking forward to going and like removing all the weeds and putting more compost in and planting for the winter. Like good, fine Capricorn soil business. And we've been talking about it yesterday. Like we're actually both vibing on more than Christmas. We're vibing on immediately after getting down to work in the sunshine, which of course it is in the Southern Hemisphere, but just like just living our best Capricorn life. So I'm into it.
yeah, I think that's perfect. The the clearing the structure of the beds so that you can do, so that they're fecund, right?
Yeah.
Is exactly right. I think like the metaphor, like the image for that is if you can if you can get the structure set in January, even though, a bunch of shit will happen later, if you have a structure set, it's much easier. One, it's more resistant to bullshit. And two, it's much easier to return to a structure that's like to a thing where the concrete is dried. Like, for example, if we're talking about personal habits, like diet or exercise or work schedule, if you make your own work schedule like we do, if you like do a month in something near ideal and get used to that, then some bullshit can happen, but it's just there to return to.
I like that.
Right, if you like try for a week and a half and then some stuff happens or you get lazy, it's much hard. Like you're returning to almost nothing. Whereas if you
Yeah.
can get a month of like, oh, I feel and see how this works, the concrete is dried, I can get back into that structure that works because it's there.
That's really cool. So one of the things we do now, the last couple of years, it's sort of to that point, is because I never super loved, but now that I am no longer 27, although you wouldn't know it, um, we wait till midnight and then basically we go to bed. But I like getting up with the sun on January 1, and on the first day of the year, we do a microcosm of what our ideal year is. Like we go to the beach, we do training, we do stuff I do some kind of work, but we do stuff on the farm so that every kind of point of what a best year looks like is ritually enacted in the first day of the year. So I like
That's
that.
great.
I'm going to extend that to all of January. Like set the physical and also psychic structure of robustness. Like like build your ideal whatever. That's cool. I'm into it. That's so
Yeah, and
rarely do we
for
get
me,
Capricorn as like the configuration of the half, but hey, here we are.
well, Capricorn has been treated unfairly for Pluto's time there, right? So Pluto being Capricorn makes it seem more oppressive and depressing than it should. And Pluto does that, for between 12 and 30 years per sign while it's there. And so, like, the Pluto in Sagittarius, which was what, like 96 to 2008, Sagittarius Jupiter didn't make religion look very good, right?
Yeah.
Pluto, Pluto in Scorpio, which was what, like 84 to 96 roughly, didn't make occultism look very good, right?
No.
Like his satanic panic and sex murders and satanic sex murder, like Pluto kind of damages the reputation
Makes
of a
sex look
sign while
good.
it's there.
Like that's AIDS as well, right? Or whatever
Yeah,
AIDS happens to
it
be, but like didn't even make sex look good. And that's quite the
yeah, it's like
task.
AIDS. Yeah, like AIDS and Dahmer and Ramirez. It's just like, oh, like that's, what kind of people want to have sex?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess the good part of the Pluto moving into Aquarius is Capricorn looks a little bit less like shadowed with horror, and it's like, oh, structure's nice. Like
Yeah.
that's actually really helpful.
Little goats are kind of cute. Let's do it. Yeah.
Little goats are cute. Yeah, for me, that has to be, it has to be like basically getting the rest of my 36 Faces edits done because I have a child due to arrive
That's true.
around the sometime in March. And so there's not going to be quiet time to
No,
contemplate edits and do like that just vanishes from my life. So it's the hardest deadline possible.
that's true. We were talking about that the other day because Fortune's Fools was released and sold out. And so so you can't get it now. And the question is, well, what do we do? And I made the joke that, well, we'll just capture people's email addresses and leave it years until they go insane and threaten to like douse your car with petrol and so on, saying, please, where's 36 Faces? So that's my little joke. I'm like, I'm going to take the 36 Faces approach to Fortune Fools and
It's
be like, no, I don't
it's
think I
the
shall.
yeah, it's the George R. R. Martin approach.
Exactly. And here I am down here at the edge of the world with two copies, both signed. Suck it, losers. Yes.
Well, it was available for 4 years before it sold out.
Yeah. No, well, yeah. I mean, Fortune's Fools was available for pre-order for 2.5, and then came out and sold out. It's like, what do you want? No, it's good. I like it. I think it's a fun and good way to build energy around it. You have so the Pluto and Aquarius thing. Everyone has been focusing on that. Something that you've just touched on there, which I need to sit with, especially if we're setting up Capricorn as the best season in H1, is the other side of Pluto moving into Aquarius is that change in opinion of Capricorn. So you can look back and go, well, you're
Mm-hmm.
actually all right. I haven't done any work around that, and I think I will because I do associate Capricorn with 2008 banking crisis
Mm-hmm.
and establishment tyranny moving in lockstep to like constrict and it's like no, hang on. It's also cute little goats and Wicker Man without the burning. Like it's little agricultural folk festivals and that kind of stuff. It's like, all right, I'll lean into that. I'll find my way into the nice part of yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Because it
and
also
it's
had Saturn.
also
Like it's actually poor Capricorn has been like slandered over the last few
oh
years
yeah.
because it's had some terrible stuff to do.
Oh yeah, it's yeah, I think of I kind of think of it like Saturdays. Like if you didn't get enough done during the week, then you have to go into the office or whatever the parallel is for that. Where it's like, oh God, I have to work on Saturday. Oh, I hate Saturn. Capricorn sucks. But then it's like, those time periods where you're like, oh, I got a lot done this week. And so I can like have fun, but on top of knowing that I was responsible and I accomplished things. So now I get to be irresponsible. Like, I was perfect with my diet, so I can have whatever the pizza today. It's that like, it's that cliched, freedom through responsibility or discipline or constraint. As opposed to with Pluto, like the thing about Pluto is it's sort of, it makes things infinite in a way where it can never be done. Like Pluto and
True.
Capricorn, it's just like infinite. Like, oh God, history is just one oppressive nightmare. Like maybe 40,000 years ago we weren't this way, but like it's all just the same, or it's all just this.
Yeah,
And
the
like
infinite
that's
horror is
that's
important.
Pluto's
Yeah, like
vibe.
it's literally the
Yeah.
underworld, like rolling a stone up the hill forever is Pluto. Yeah, okay, that's
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. 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 Yes.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the yeah, Pluto and Capricorn is very much that line from 1984 was like, imagine like a boot stomping on a human face forever.
Yeah.
And that like brutal end. It's sort of, yeah. Anyway, and
No,
so
it's
yeah, removing the infinity from Capricorn is makes it much more palatable.
yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I think so. It's very interesting to me, as usual, that like the major turning point in the Armstrong model is a 60-something% overlap. The other thing that's worth mentioning, which otherwise hasn't come up, but is my part of this to do, is January, February are a mess, which we discussed, but like looking at the charts, that's what that is. And something there's a panic cycle in the second week of January in a bunch of different arrays, including the Dow, and I that's just
Interesting.
probably a timing of when it's going to be those first 2 months of like Mars fucking around and planets. Like the only thing to bear in mind for people is that the ECM says second week of January, and in particular, that's looking most likely to be a escalation of things in Europe, which would be like again another surprise. But we have elections this year. Like Putin has to sort out. Like Putin has to bring that story to a close as well. Like a bunch of people have to bring that story to a close. So weird stuff gonna. Anyway, that's the only thing that we didn't
Yeah.
discuss. Model doesn't accord.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's hard to, or I would say it's impossible or irresponsible to say, oh, like the
It'll be
first
this. Yeah.
half of the year is just Mars all the time and not like mention war at all. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
right. So one, it doesn't look very peace loving. Um, I have like a 40% hope that maybe there can be a truce in the Russo-Ukraine thing before everything gets wild. At that halfway point. I don't know. I have like a bunch of research on that is giving me very mixed bag.
Yes.
But in general, like if we're looking for, so one thing that people are increasingly talking about that, you talk about from time to time, is the quote unquote World War III
Yeah.
event, or the thing, like the series of things that remakes the map enough to for it to occupy a similar-ish space, right? Which I think will look very different than both of the world wars. But like I think a lot of this Mars stuff, you're going to hear more and more. Is this World War III? The
Yeah.
meme with the anime guy who's like looking at the butterfly. Is this blah blah blah? I feel like Mars Pluto, it's going to be like, is this World War III? And then Mars and Saturn, oh, is this World War III? Mars and Aries, is this like? I feel like that's going to be an increasing habit. I don't think, as we've talked about, I'd be really surprised if our thing that, again, rearranges stuff on that level happens this year at all. I think
Me
we're
too.
bare
Yeah.
minimum, we got to get to
Yeah.
second quarter of
And it's a good
2025. And it's
example
really
of a
the,
red herring, right? Like, so let's say it's the Mars Saturn conjunction, because I think about historians in future times historicizing World War III. And in the same way, if you're going to write a book about World War II or World War I, it's like, well, do you start it with Franz Ferdinand, or do you start with the conditions that led to that, right? So
mhm.
once we get through World War III, it will be a game of like, when do you start it? But practically speaking, on this side of it, the that's a good example. That meme. There's going to be a bunch of, is this World War III? Is this World War III? The answer is not yet. But fast forward 5 years, if you wanted to, I don't know, cast the chart for it at the whatever the fuck happens around like the Mars Saturn conjunction, that would be okay. But as for now, it's still red herrings because it's the 25 to 27. It's when we get the big rearrangements to the world. So don't start. It's a weird way of saying it. Like, it's not World War III yet, and I don't know how that impacts your planning on a personal basis. And afterwards, you will be able to say it started now, but you can't say it yet. It's still a red herring now.
Yeah, we'll see, right?
Yeah.
And so, but on that note, right, like, with all the Mars stuff, I'd almost be surprised if we don't get another regional conflict. With all this Mars stuff, there are kind of two kinds of wars that I've been thinking about a lot in regard to these patterns, and that's called hegemonic wars, and then what Zayon calls like unfrozen conflicts. Unfrozen conflict is basically some sort of beef that never went away, but external factors made it so that it wasn't possible for those countries or people to have that fight. And so it was frozen, but with big powers' attention, other places, that conflict gets unfrozen.
Yeah.
So that's one kind of war. I would expect more of that, and then hegemonic wars, which are when the whatever sort of policing or larger powers in a region are distracted, then it's sort of like, well, let's test and see if they're still capable of controlling that. So this kind of, and we're seeing, in addition to Ukraine and Israel right now, we had uh, uh, fucking Venezuela kind of eat
In Guyana.
half of Guyana. We had, God, I think it was like 200,000 Armenians that were just removed from Azerbaijan, made to leave their property. Like basically a non-exterminating style genocide. Like these sort of like sleeping dragons.
Yeah.
And a lot of these will be waking. We'll continue to have these waking up. And again, like the reaction in the news will always be, is this World War III?
Correct. Because World War II was a conglomeration of opportunistic regional moves, right? Like it was Japan, it was Italy, it was Germany, obviously. And the ones to watch for the escalation into World War III here are Iran and Korea, and then eventually China and Taiwan. And whoever goes first, the others are going to wait. Like, who ties up the hegemon and who makes the next move? Like that's what it looks like escalating into World War III. Is those are the main ones. There'll be like Venezuela, Guyana, beautiful part of the world, lots and lots of oil, not going to reshape the map anytime soon. Iran, the Koreas, China, that will. Right. So let's see if we get like little ones or big ones through this
Yeah.
Mars
My
H1.
guess at this point is when we get a couple years from now, I think it's going to be multiple medium-sized things that don't actually get everybody to team up. Um, I think it's going to, as I said on with you before, like I think it'll be an era of simultaneous big crises. But I don't think the pattern right now in the world, this like age of air pattern, as well
Cool.
as some other brands, I don't like. It doesn't look like everybody lines up in on team A or B, like shirts or skins, or red or blue or whatever. I think it's much more multiplicitous. But if you get a bunch of those fires all burning at the same time, right, the total amount of fire might look like World War One, but it's not
Exactly.
going to be as. I don't think this stuff is going to be as concentrated.
I think that's very fair. Because the risk profile is different. If this isn't a storming the beaches of Normandy, World War Three. If that's yeah, at least the West
Yeah,
isn't
well, and
storming the
world.
beaches of Normandy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fun stuff. Um,
that's true.
but yeah,
That's
the
true.
like, yeah. But anyway, so yeah, like the is this World War Three meme like probably over and over again during the first half.
And like the answer is yes, but not in a way that's tactically useful. Like it's the answer for space fans is not yet. Historians writing books in the 2030s, sure, but tactically it's not, right?
Well, and
Which
in terms
yeah,
of like what that means for your country, right, wherever you live, like the idea of world war generally suggests to people like, oh, then my whole country is going to go to war. We're going to mobilize for this. That's going to be what everybody's doing. It's like if those conflicts aren't happening exactly where you are, probably not, right? Like
so
your military might be there partially. Maybe your country will send better or worse weapons, but again, it's very like I think we're looking at much more like half in, half out, fragmented things than the
I think the
like
fragmentation's going
everybody
to cut.
all in.
Yeah, I think the fragmentation's going to cut deeper because like I put the it's already being discussed in the US, but I put the likelihood of a draft at about 60%. But I think it's a draft of the some of the 8 million people that have been shipped through the southern border. But I think in Australia's case, if they were to they're sending warships to the Red Sea now, wildly unpopular. Buying those nuclear submarines from the US, wildly unpopular. Countries that say, okay, we like tentatively, maybe we should have a draft, I think those governments collapse. And actually, if I look at the Armstrong model, a bunch of Western governments collapsed this decade. So I think World War III, to your point, is like a preposterous hot mess. What is missing between, say, World War II and now is we don't have a shared civilization. Like, no one likes Western governments who lives in Western countries. There's no idea of forgotten country because, like, fuck you, you're a demented potato who's made everything more expensive. Or, like, there's no way that there's no, like, shared martial dream for people to get behind and say, as a matter of fact, I will enlist with my friends and go to Europe and die. No one, everyone hates
Yeah,
our
I think
governments. There's no way you can get that
yeah,
across the line.
I think it's almost the like polar opposite situation as World War II, which was like as far as wars go, like maximum moral surety on
Exactly.
almost every side.
Yeah.
And also, you know, a lot of sort of almost all the players were like the people were behind whatever it was. Whereas, yeah, like the if you like part of this like entering a new 200-year era, like it's worth pointing out this is year four of a 200-year thing,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That we're entering this year, um, and that this is like the most disorganized and chaotic of the four periods that history cycles through. The air periods are always scattery and weird. And
It's
if you look at like internal confidence, right? Like, sure, the West is a mess. Iran is a mess. You know that like it's a fundamentalist government where in polls 30% of the people say that they're actively religious. It's a less religious society than the United States by
yeah.
self-reporting, right? How long can that last? Russia has a lot of internal tensions. China has a lot of internal tensions. Like it's, it's all of these players have, like the opposite of that, like Marvel certainty of
Yes.
good and evil. Like nobody's, the populations are not with the governments,
It is
or they're, there's like
literally sounds like
maximum
that
chaos.
famous saying, like generals are always fighting the last war. Our leaders are going to try Earth triplicity tactics in this triplicity, and it's already not going to work. By the way, they know this. Like they know that their actual popularity and so on, but you're in this point where, in order to save themselves, they're going to try and do stuff that's just not going to work. Which is like, it was funny talking about the collapse of Western governments as a positive. It's a positive in the sense that the alternative is we all get drafted into some idiotic and pointless trench war with China. Like play that out, right? Like stuff that's not going to happen. But
Yeah, I mean,
the
thank God
alternative,
we don't
yeah,
have like the United States and Chinese populations are both sure that they're going to fight a moral war against each other. Like that would be way worse than this like chaotic, uncertain mess that is developing.
yeah. All right, that's oddly positive. And
Well,
funnily
and
enough, yeah.
and so this is one of the things we talking about when we met the other day, was sort of takeaways, like with all this Mars stuff, on a figurative level and maybe a literal level, depending on where you live. Like be careful about what fights you enlist in, right? Like once you conscript yourself, once you like enlist in a fight, you're going to bond with other people in the trenches,
Yeah.
and that will consume your reality. There are a lot of fights getting handed out during the first half of this year, and think very carefully before you enlist in whatever sort of conflict, because it's much easier to get in than it is to get out.
See, we were in full accordance. That's what I was just about to say, which was, and funnily enough, as we close with the medicine part of the show, it was you said, what are you enlisting in? Whose war are you fighting in? Very important.
Yeah.
Because, like, we're talking about Mars and the Kinzhal missiles and Iran supporting Gaza and all this kind of stuff, which, yes, we have listeners and whatever in Israel, but I mean, like, no, Mars is still going to go through your chart, right? Like you're still going to be dealing with the fucking conflict in your actual life. So it's whose war are you fighting in, and who are you allowing to enlist you? I think is really, really important to us, because you're going to be invited to be called up one way or the other. You're going to be pulled
Yeah,
into
exactly. There.
conflicts, and just be careful. It doesn't mean don't do them either, because like there are right and wrong positions available in the world at the moment. But it just be careful and let you be sovereign over like who enlists you, where are you enlisting. I think that's very important.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because there's
So my bit of
a
medicine
lot of
on top
lot
of
of
that.
armies are recruiting right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My bit of medicine on top of that, because I think that's really important, is a line from Seneca, which is destiny leads the willing and drags the unwilling. So it's to your point about using Capricorn season, like we are heading into this breach one way or the other. Destiny is pulling us all in there, right? So be careful with who you enlist, and yes, Capricorn your life.
Yeah, and as always, it's just history. Like
Yeah,
there's a 2028 and a 2029 and a 2043. Um, like the world, some things need to shake out over the next 5 years, and they
but
will.
that one.
And similar and much worse things have happened in the past, and the world was still there,
Yeah,
right? Like it's a it's like I'm reminded of going to a strip mall karate school and learning to break boards, where you don't punch the target, you punch through the target, right? And so when you're thinking about, oh, this year, oh no, it's just going to lead into like this scary thing, like this pretty chaotic couple years, geopolitically, it's like you're not going to there, you're going through there. You're
great. It's
punching
wonderful.
through the target,
Yeah.
right? You're building the cathedral.
Yeah, wonderful. To wit, other than having a kid and bringing out 36 faces, What else do you have planned for H1? Or is that enough?
I mean, those two are pretty big.
I'll keep you busy.
Because 36 Faces has taken so long, I have probably at least 4 shovel-ready book projects behind it. And so probably a lot of the next couple years is going to be like making progress on book projects between changing diapers is going to be
Yeah.
my guess.
How is your speech to
But I,
text? Like, because you do talk kind of how you write, and if you are moving into like early parenting phase, and if you're going to be up at you're up at 3 a.m. anyway because you've got to watch the space. But like, do you reckon you could do? How is your like voice to text? Do you think you could dictate drafts of a book?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
For me, my
that's true.
mental, my sort of the the trance is very different for me. Like thinking and talking is a very different space for me than like thinking and writing.
Yeah. I've tried. I
But
thought this was going to say then I could do 5 books a year, and I can't even do blog posts voice to text yet. I feel like if I could take a month to go and retrain, like if I could just go into the
yeah,
woods, further into the woods, I already live there, but like further into the woods and just voice to text and not come out until I'm a master at it, things would change. But I just don't have that month. And also, I kind of like the particular high that comes from like mind to fingers to screen.
hmm
Kind of like it. So anyway,
it's a yeah, it's a very particular space. I like it a lot.
yeah, sweet.
And we'll hopefully be spending a lot more time there. But yeah, I'll be teaching my classes. I'll be, working on books, teaching my classes. Might do a reading here or there. Kind of same old stuff. I guess was that a gentle segue into plugs, Gordon? The
Yes,
what are you
yes,
doing? Okay, I thought
yeah,
so. Very very smooth. So yeah, faces. Ideally the text really needs to be done by February. There's the rest of the book stuff, right? But the getting the version 2.0 text is the hard part. Everything else is ready. And then I'm going to be doing another big intake into my year 1 program in June. I just did a big intake a week ago. But if you want to join that, that's opening up in June on June 14th. And intakes are open between an hour and a day, I think is the longest they've ever gone before the seats are filled. And yeah, just kind of chugging along. We'll also, I guess, we'll also be releasing more of the astro magic that we've done through Sphere and Sundry. There will be a very nice and Moon and Taurus series coming out probably January. That
nice.
was super. It was so nice to make. So I picked this day when I thought the of all the days that the moon can join Jupiter while in Taurus of the entire year that Jupiter is in Taurus, I picked what I thought would be the best day. And it was the day this fall that they stopped fighting in Israel and Gaza
Oh,
for
beautiful. That's
just
good.
a day. And a package that I've been waiting for that I didn't know if it would come or not arrived first thing. And Kate got a metric fuck ton of baby stuff that she had ordered. Like all of this happened that day, and I was like, "This is the right day for the lunar series."
Amazing.
So that's coming out soon. We got some other stuff. The spirit, the epic Thema Mundi project materia is on sale again right now, which really is sort of a wildly psychedelic, potent result. I'm really impressed with how that project worked. We did. It was a combination of 7 different workings for the 7 traditional planets, all assembled over a week ritually, and the result is, I guess, quite magical. Would be an understatement. We haven't sent you any of that, Gordon. Got to send you
No,
some.
oh,
It's
that'd be
it's on a
lovely.
different level than the rest of the stuff. It's pretty
Mm.
wild.
Well, I'll throw the rest of the stuff out. Awesome.
No, it's it's more like a it's almost like a refined sort of prima materia.
Ooh,
To me it feels like I refer to it as like creator god crack, Like it has this like raw bringing things into being sort of energy, right? Because it was the 7 planets that were assembled ritually along the pattern of the Thema Mundi, which is the mythical chart of the birth of the universe, from the Greco-Egyptian astrology. And so it really has this like, God the creator, like raw creative energy and force
Well,
sort
yeah.
of thing. It's
It'll probably
more like
teach.
a
We're doing prayer
potentiator.
as the member course for Q1, which I'm really looking forward to. I thought I had something, which I do have something specific to say about it, but as I'm putting it together now, I almost want the course to be 6 months, like the foundations was. Like there's a lot to it, and yeah, it might team with a prayer course theme, which I'm pretty excited about, just in terms of stuff I've got going on. I had hoped to be further along with the end of my Dot trilogy, but the Paraguay situation fucked with that somewhat. So fingers crossed that gets out before proper World War III. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the main thing for Q1 is the prayer course and usual client sessions kind of stuff. But I'm super looking forward to it. Like yesterday, no, it was the day before, I went up to Hobart and I had all my notes, and it was one of those. This is gonna make me. I'm not saying I'm Mozart when I say it was like an Amadeus moment of just like all my notes coming together. It's like, this is what this is. Like it was really cool. So I'm super
Did you
excited to
did you
start it on the prayer course.
did you titter unnervingly like
Obviously.
or however?
Obviously. I should watch that again, actually, because one of the things in this video, the intentions video, one of the things I'm committing to for 2024 is to watch a film a week, because modern film is so shit. I basically saw 2 films, I think, last year, 2 or 3 films. And I don't even mean in the cinema. I mean, like, I watched 2 or 3 films last year. I didn't even watch Lord of the Rings, so that would have counted for 3. So and I'm a film student. Like, I have a film degree. So in 2024, one of my commitments is to watch a film a week, and they obviously will not be new films because they are mostly garbage, but that's kind of my point. My point is I haven't seen a Cassavetes film for a while. I haven't watched the original Nosferatu for like 15 years. Amazing is still in 27. Like, there's all these like actually really good bits of cinema that this is my Saturn in Pisces thing, right? I'm like, hang on, give me like fine. I'm going to have a year of finely crafted delights, and that's one of my commitments for the year.
Very nice, very nice.
Well, sir, always wonderful to do these things. Always amazing to catch
Yeah.
up. And this time you're having a fucking kid, so like extra special.
Well, and arriving just in time for the chaos, March, April portion of the year.
You
So,
two wouldn't have it any other way.
yeah. Well, Year of the Dragon, it will be the birth. Yeah, it will be the birth of a dragon.
All right.
We shall see.
Yeah.
But
If you get a girl, put her in a fire with some dragon eggs. See what happens.
yeah, well,
Nice
it looks like a boy, based
right.
on the anatomy so far.
All right. Well, don't put him in the fire with dragon eggs then. I don't think that's how that worked.
I mean, there's only one way to find out, but I
Sure.
think that it'll be us in the fire with the dragon eggs in April.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much. Really, really love these chats, and I have, particularly with the Capricorn stuff, I have much to personally consider and pick over. So, thank you so much.
Excellent. All right. Well, take care, everyone.